I'm Carol Wilson, Editor-at-Large for LightReading, and I'm here with Kevin Sheehan, CTO of the Americas for Ciena. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Carol. It's great to be here.
So we're here at MEF 18. You gave a very interesting keynote this morning, and you hit on some themes that were actually from a previous keynote from a couple years ago. I thought they were interesting because you hit on things that I think we all took for granted about that were going to transpire with virtualization and digital transformation, and we were learning maybe not so much. So let's start. The first one was more for less.
Yep.
Then the need for speed.
Yep.
And then seamless connectivity, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so how has the industry done on those 3 points?
Yeah, so I originally talked about these, like you mentioned, back in 2015, which 3 years in our industry is a long time.
Yes.
And more for less. You know, back then we were talking about the fact that service providers especially are constantly being asked to do more for less with their networks. Whether it's unlimited bandwidth, you know, and they have to build a network, but they don't have more ARPU per user.
Right.
So what do you do? And our vision back then, the industry's vision, was to really heavily leverage NFV, right? Like do things virtually, it'll be much cheaper. And I think one of the practical lessons learned over the last 3 years is that with NFV, it's actually more for more. You know,
spend more to get
spend more to get more, at least initially.
Okay.
You know, so you have to often invest in new people or new training for your people so that, you know, you learn more about the IT side that these virtual devices are going to run on. Exactly. You know, whether it's OpenStack or whatever infrastructure you're going to run on. And then, you know, initially a lot of the licenses for virtual devices were as expensive, if not more expensive, than the physical device. Now that's changed a bit, you know, with the deployments. And although you get a much more powerful infrastructure at the end of the day, in the beginning, I think it is a more for more situation. You're spending more from both a CapEx standpoint and from an OpEx standpoint, but you do get a more powerful infrastructure.
So something else I hear a lot about from Ciena these days is adaptive networking, or adaptive IP, sometimes you call it.
Yep.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so with adaptive networking, what we're talking about is really forming a closed loop of automation.
Okay.
So we start out with Connect, basically the networking infrastructure.
Okay.
And ideally some of the next generation networking infrastructure that has very advanced telemetry associated with it. So more than the legacy equipment that's out there.
Okay.
And then we add some analytics and big data analytics, and we talk about it as Sense. So you have Connect and Sense. And you're able to now grab that telemetry, the advanced telemetry, and start to analyze it. And then we pass it forward into an automation engine like our Blue Planet MDSO, where we act. So
that's the closed loop piece of it.
That's the closed loop. Connect, sensing, and act. Okay. And it's kind of, you know, I contrasted it in the keynote to, you know, traditional optical networking where you always had primary and secondary paths, whether it be a ring or a mesh. But you basically automatically switched from the primary to the secondary or the tertiary, but there was no real intelligence to pick the best way. You just knew this was a bad way. And now with adaptive networking, by putting that closed loop together, you can actually look at, okay, this is, maybe you can even predict that the primary is going to fail before it fails.
In a predictive way.
In a predictive way.
Based on its behavior.
Based on its behavior. That data you're mining from the telemetry and analyzing with your analytics. And then more importantly, or as importantly, you can then look at the other paths before you go to them and see if they are okay. And see which one is optimal. So it's a little like the Waze traffic app that you probably have on your phone. It doesn't just say, this way is bad. It actually looks at the alternative ways.
It says there's a police officer on this
way. That too. You got to be careful for that.
Okay, then the other piece I want to talk to you about today is this notion of how you begin to modernize the transport part of the network and where it needs to be modernized. So what can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so of course we're putting in more and more bandwidth every day. You know, one thing, a certain trend is that we're all using more and more bandwidth. It's not going away. You know, and we're making improvements both in the amount of bandwidth that's available and then reducing the amount of power that we consume. And then adding to the density as well. So the overall economic picture gets better. Again, back to that more for less challenge that service providers face. And we're also coming up with new ways to package products that were traditionals. You know, traditional, maybe it was a large chassis, and now we're getting as much bandwidth into a 1 or 2 RU box, right? And we're kind of learning that from our hyperscale partners, right? Because they consume bandwidth like no one else.
And that makes those kinds of things better, able to push it deeper into the network, closer to the edge.
Exactly. They become more specialized, so then when you talk about bringing fiber deeper, like into a service provider's network, now we have a specialized platform that you can efficiently bring multi-terabytes of data in a very reliable way out into a street cabinet. You know, very close to a neighborhood, for example, which you've never been able to do that before. Especially in an economical fashion.
So Kevin, tell me specifically about adaptive IP.
Yeah, so adaptive IP, the concept is that, you know, we're developing IP functionality in a product that's specialized for certain applications in the network, or optimized for certain applications. So, you know, one of those applications is actually the onset of 5G networks coming in. Right, so you have tremendous cell densification, fiber densification going on with 5G, or coming with 5G soon, right, in the coming calendar year. And as you do that, you're going to have much more, two things are going to happen. You'll have many more cell sites, and us as users with our 5G devices will have more simultaneous connectivity to these cell sites. So what ends up happening is you need a lot more routing capability at all of these sites. But again, in the more for less problem, you have all these sites. You can't put a cell site router, a traditional cell site router at every one of these small cells and macro cell sites. So what we've come up with adaptive IP as one application example is a very useful subset of IP routing that's specific to certain applications. You know, and again, it solves the problem of routing cell site signaling for smooth call handoff, but it doesn't have to do all of the capabilities of a traditional large router.
Well, you've covered a lot of territory. Kevin, thanks for being here with me today.
It's my pleasure.